She came home laughing. After a week of silence, after 30 years of marriage, she walked through that door with a tan, a new perfume, and the same smile she used to wear when she still loved me, only this time it wasn't for me. I didn't shout. I didn't ask where she'd been. I just looked at her, that woman I'd built a life around, and realized in one breath that the home I'd been protecting was already ashes. You ever feel that exact second when love dies in front of you, but your heart's too proud to admit it? My name's Harlan Pierce. 66 years old, and this is the story of how I took my life back. Not with anger, not with noise, but with the quietest, sharpest revenge a man can have: dignity. If you're watching this right now, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you first heard about my story, because I want to know how far the truth has traveled. What you're about to hear isn't just about betrayal. It's about what a man becomes when the person he trusted most teaches him what it means to be free. She came back on a Tuesday and laughed, not the nervous kind of laugh that tries to mend a crack. No, this one was careless, bright, almost cruel. The sound bounced off the hallway walls like it belonged to another house. She dropped her purse on the couch, kicked off her heels, and said, "Lord, it feels good to be home." I was sitting right there in my chair by the window, the same chair where I'd waited every night of the last 7 days, listening to the silence, wondering if I'd already been widowed by choice. 7 days. No call, no text, not even a lie to keep the air warm. When she finally turned toward me, her smile slipped for half a second. Not because she saw me, but because she remembered I still existed. "Don't look at me like that." "Harlan," she said, shaking her hair loose, the gold in her curls, catching the late light. "I just needed some time away. Some breathing room. You suffocate me. Sometimes you know that." She said it as if taking a week to vanish, without a word, was a reasonable form of yoga. The air between us went still. I looked at her, at the woman I'd built 30 years of mornings and mortgages with, and realized she was talking to me the way people talk to someone they've already left. "You should be grateful I came back," she added. That word, grateful, it hit me harder than the silence had. I stood slowly, feeling every bit of 67 years drag at my knees. My voice, when it came, was quiet, too quiet. I said. "I'm real glad you came back, Marianne, because now you'll have all the time in the world." Her eyes narrowed, just a flicker of confusion that half second before the floor gives way. I walked to the credenza under the family pictures, opened the drawer that always stuck, and took out a black envelope I'd kept hidden for 6 days. It was heavy in my hand, not with paper, but with truth. I turned and held it out to her. "What's that?" she asked. "Why don't you open it?" Her hand hesitated. For once, the woman who'd never been afraid of anything looked scared of something that couldn't even move. She tore the seal anyway. A single photograph slid out, her face drained of color. Another page, hotel receipts, bank transfers. Then another, phone logs, messages. Each one a small funeral for a piece of my life. I watched the blood rise and fall under her skin like tide. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "I hired someone." The words came out steady, like I'd been rehearsing them in my sleep. Maybe I had. She looked up at me, the first real eye contact in months. "You hired someone to spy on me." "No," I said. "I hired someone to remind me I wasn't crazy." The clock on the wall ticked once, twice louder than it ever had before. Outside, a neighbor's lawnmower coughed to life. Inside, my wife's world was ending in slow motion. "You followed me," she said. "I followed the money." Her fingers shook as she flipped through the papers, transfers to a man named Dean Porter. 10,000 here, 5 there. A photo of them leaving a hotel, his hand on the small of her back. That same touch I used to think was mine. I didn't move closer. I just let her read. Sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "Harlan, I can explain." "No," I said softly. "You already did. For 2 years. Her chin trembled. "It's not what it looks like." I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Marianne, you've been gone a week and I haven't touched a drop of whiskey, haven't broken a plate, haven't shouted once." "You know why?" She didn't answer. "Because I already broke in private. I've done my shouting. You weren't here to hear it. I walked toward the window where the evening light cast our reflections against the glass, hers sharp and frantic, mine a shadow with nothing left to lose. "I'm not angry," I said. That's the funny thing. I thought I'd be. Turns out anger burns fast, but humiliation, that one sits in the bone. She dropped the papers like they were on fire. "You don't understand what it's been like." "Oh, I do," I cut in. "I just stopped pretending not to." Her eyes went wet. "You think I wanted this? You think I meant to hurt you?" "I think I said," turning to face her, "that you wanted to feel young again. And you used me to afford it." She looked away like the wall might forgive her if I wouldn't. "You can't just throw away 30 years, she said, voice cracking. "I didn't throw them away, Marianne. You spent them." Her breathing quickened. For a moment she looked ready to argue, but the words died. The house went still again. I sat back down in my chair, the same one where I'd waited all week. She stood frozen, staring at the evidence scattered on the floor, pieces of a truth she could no longer bargain with. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "Yes, I do." I reached into my pocket and took out a small brass key, the new lock I'd had installed that morning. I set it on the table between us. "What's that?" she asked. "That's your proof," I said, "that you don't live here anymore." She shook her head, tears cutting through her mascara. "You can't just—" "I can," I said. "I already did." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I looked at her, really looked at the woman who'd once danced barefoot in our kitchen, who'd cried on my chest when her mother passed, who used to run her fingers along my arm as if reading Braille made of veins. I couldn't find that woman anywhere in this room. Do you know what's strange about betrayal? It doesn't come loud. It's quiet, patient. It learns your habits, your tone, your heartbeat. Then one day, it walks in wearing your wife's perfume. Marianne sank onto the couch, the photograph sliding from her lap onto the floor. In it, she was smiling, radiant, alive, with a man who wasn't me. "Why are you so calm?" she asked finally, almost angry. "Because I said the storm's already been through me." Outside, the sky had turned the color of copper and old bruises. I stood by the window, my reflection cutting across hers in the glass. For a heartbeat, it looked like we were still standing side by side. But the light shifted, and I saw what was true. She was already fading from my life, and I was already learning how to breathe without her. I turned back, my voice low, final. "You had your week of freedom, Marianne," I said. "I used mine differently. The thing about routines is they make you blind. You keep doing the same steps every morning, and you start to believe that means life is steady, that as long as the coffee's hot and the mail comes on time, your heart's still safe. Before all this, my mornings were peaceful in that quiet southern way. 6 a.m., kettle on blues playing soft on the kitchen radio. I'd make my first cup before Marianne even got out of bed. She always liked hers with 2 sugars and a splash of cream, said it tasted like forgiveness. Funny how she stopped asking for it long before she stopped deserving it. We'd sit on opposite sides of the kitchen table, sharing silence more than conversation. I used to mistake that silence for comfort. Maybe it was once, but somewhere along the way it turned into distance, the kind that creeps in slow like rot behind paint. Marianne used to work part-time at the community center organizing events for seniors. She said it gave her purpose, a reason to leave the house. Then little by little, work turned into meetings, and meetings turned into late nights. I'd wait up sometimes listening to tires roll past our street, hoping one of them was hers. One Thursday, she came home past midnight, smelling like a hotel lobby perfume, layered too thick, and under it a trace of something musky, something that didn't belong. I asked where she'd been. She didn't even flinch. "Planning committee dinner," she said, slipping off her earrings like we were talking about groceries. That was the first time I looked at her and saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. At first I blamed myself, thought maybe I'd gotten dull, too predictable, too old. Maybe I'd stopped noticing things that mattered to her. You get to your 60s and the mirror starts giving you bad news every morning. It's easy to believe you're the problem. But then the little things started lining up like breadcrumbs, leading somewhere I didn't want to go. She started locking her phone, turned the screen away when she texted. Her laughter changed quieter, meaner, like she was saving her real joy for someone else. One night, I heard her humming while folding laundry, and when I walked into the room, she stopped, mid-note, flinched, like I'd caught her stealing. "Everything all right?" I asked. She smiled too quickly. "Of course, Harlan."
Why wouldn't it be? Because people don't look guilty in their own home unless they've already started leaving it. But I let it slide. I told myself I was being paranoid. That's what love does. It makes you doubt your instincts in favor of the story you've already written. Then came the church story. She told me she was helping with a charity outreach program, visiting shelters on weekends. I wanted to believe her. God knows I did. I even offered to drive her once, but she brushed me off with a laugh, said, "You'd just slow me down, old man, old man." It was meant as a joke, but something in her tone scratched deep. By March, she was volunteering 3 nights a week. I'd sit in my chair, TV on low, pretending to watch the news while the clock ticked past midnight. I started keeping a notepad on the table, writing down the nights she left, the times she came home, the excuses. Not to trap her, just to see the pattern. I'm an old railroad man. I've spent my life tracking schedules. Once you learn the rhythm of something, you can feel when it's offbeat. It was offbeat for a long time. Then came the night that split my life in two. It was raining, one of those Georgia rains that smells like old tin and lightning. I'd finished a long shift volunteering down at the freight yard. On my way home, I passed through downtown near Peachtree, where the fancy restaurants stay open late. Through the fogged windshield, I saw her, Mary Ann, sitting at a corner table inside La Fontaine, the same place we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary. She was facing a man I'd never seen before. He was white, maybe mid-40s, sharp suit watch that cost more than my truck. His hand rested on hers, casual, practiced. She laughed. Not the laugh she gave me these days, the thin one made of politeness. No, this one was bright and alive, the kind that used to make waiters turn their heads. I sat there for 5 minutes, motor running, rain sliding down the glass like it wanted to hide me from the truth. My fingers clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went pale. I told myself, go inside, make her see you. But I didn't. I just sat there, letting that picture burn into me. When she came home that night, her hair was damp from the rain, her lipstick slightly faded. "You're still up?" she asked, surprised. "Yeah," I said. "Couldn't sleep." She smiled and kissed my forehead. "Long meeting tonight. The church wants to sponsor another fundraiser." I looked right at her and said, "That's good. Hope it pays off." She didn't catch it. She never does when the lie fits too comfortably in her mouth. After she went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen till dawn. The streetlights flickered outside like they were blinking back tears for me. The next day, I tried to pretend nothing had happened. People like me, men raised to fix what's broken, we think silence is strength. We think ignoring a crack keeps the wall standing. But silence doesn't fix anything. It just lets the damage grow roots. Over the next weeks, I started noticing things that had been there all along. New clothes she said were on sale, a bottle of perfume from a brand I couldn't pronounce, receipts for gas stations 40 miles away, and always that same laugh, the one I used to love, the one she now saved for someone else. My brother Leonard came by one Sunday. He poured himself some sweet tea and watched me for a while before saying, "You all right, Harlan? You've been quiet lately." "Just tired," I said. He studied me the way brothers do, like they're reading the fine print on your soul. If something's wrong at home, you better face it before it faces you. I brushed it off, told him he was worrying over nothing. But the truth was, by then the house already felt like a stranger's. Every evening I'd sit by the window and wait for her car lights to sweep across the driveway. Each time I told myself, if she just walks through that door smiling, maybe it's not too late. But love that needs proof isn't love anymore. It's an investigation waiting to happen. I didn't sleep much after that. When I did, I dreamed of trains, long, heavy ones, slipping off their tracks and into the dark. Then one night, Marianne left her phone on the counter while she showered. She never did that. The screen lit up, buzzing against the marble. One message previewed, "Can't wait for next time." Same room I picked it up. My hands were shaking, but not from age. I didn't scroll, didn't need to. That single sentence was enough to tell me everything.
She came out of the bathroom humming towel in her hair and froze when she saw me holding it, looking for something she asked. No, I said, placing it down gently. I already found it. That night I went out to the porch, sat under the buzzing light, and made a call to an old friend from the railroad, Moses Gray. He'd retired from the force years ago, opened a small private investigation business on the south side. When he picked up, his voice sounded exactly the same, slow, deep, no nonsense. Moses, it's Harlan. I need the truth about my wife. He didn't ask questions. Men like him already know what that sentence means. All right, he said. Meet me tomorrow. Bring what you got. That was the beginning of the end, the moment when denial gave way to clarity. Looking back now, I realize the marriage didn't break the day she disappeared. It broke that night in the rain outside La Fontaine when I saw her laughing, like the world still loved her. I just hadn't accepted it yet. I met Moses Gray at a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and second chances. He was already sitting in a booth by the window, the morning sun cutting across his dark face. Same deep lines, same half-smile he'd had back when we used to ride the midnight freight together. He looked older, sure we both did, but he still had that sharpness in his eyes. The kind of man who didn't just look at you, but through you. Damn, Harlan, he said, shaking my hand. Didn't think you'd ever be the one calling me for this kind of thing. Neither did I said, sitting down. The waitress, a young woman with tired eyes and a voice too sweet for this kind of morning, poured us coffee without asking. Moses took his black. I added cream and stirred mine like it could explain something. Tell me everything, he said, so I did. The late nights, the church lie, the perfume, the laughter that didn't belong to me. I told him about the restaurant, the text message, the look on her face when she caught me holding her phone. He didn't interrupt. He just nodded slow, like a man tracking a train wreck he couldn't stop but still had to document. When I finished, I felt empty, like I'd said my confession in a booth that smelled of bacon grease instead of incense. Moses set his cup down. All right, I'll find out what's going on. But Harlan, yeah. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Are you sure you want to know? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You sure you're ready for that? I looked out the window at the parking lot. An old man was trying to back his truck out of a tight space, wheels squealing against the curb. He just kept going, determined to get free, even if he scraped up his fender doing it. I knew that feeling too well. I need the truth, I said, even if it ruins me. He nodded once. Then let's ruin you right. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket. What's her full name, date of birth? Places she says she goes. I gave him everything. Her yoga class schedule, her supposed charity work. Her best friend's address, even the last 4 digits of our joint account. Moses wrote it all down in neat, tight handwriting, then tore out a page and slid it toward me. Deposit $2,000 here, he said. That'll cover the start. If it gets messy, I'll let you know. I hesitated. Messy how? He smiled, that tired cop smile that says you don't want to know. The next 3 days were slow torture. I still went to work at the train yard habit mostly. My hands knew what to do even when my head was somewhere else. When I came home, the house felt louder in its quiet. The refrigerator hummed, the tick of the kitchen clock, even the soft squeak of floorboards when I walked by her side of the bed. Every sound reminded me she was still lying to me. Marianne came home late Wednesday, smelling of wine and unfamiliar cologne. You're up again, she said, feigning surprise. Couldn't sleep, I said. Too quiet in here. She smiled, soft and distant. You always say that when you're thinking too much. Then she kissed my cheek and walked upstairs. I sat there another hour, the cold coffee in my hand, tasting like metal. The next afternoon, Moses called. Got something, he said. His voice didn't sound excited. It sounded heavy, the way a man sounds when he's holding bad news he doesn't want to deliver. We met at the same diner, same booth, same waitress. He came in carrying a thick brown envelope under his arm. I didn't think it'd be this quick, I said. She ain't careful, he replied. Makes it easier. He slid the envelope across the table. I'll let you look. But Harlan, you should brace yourself. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first photo was grainy but clear enough. Marianne walking out of a boutique hotel on Peachtree Street, head down, sunglasses on, next to a tall man in a dark suit. He was maybe mid-40s, white, clean-shaven, with a kind of arrogance that wears itself like cologne. "That him?" I asked. "Name's Dean Porter," Moses said. "Realtor. Divorced. Couple of shady deals in his past. 2 bankruptcies, 1 lawsuit for fraud." The next photo showed them at a restaurant. Not the one I'd seen before, another place, this one near Midtown. Her hand was on his arm.
He was smiling that smile men give when they know they're winning something they shouldn't have.
I flipped through more pictures, them leaving the hotel. Them at a gas station, him brushing her hair back with his hand like he owned it. Every image felt like a nail being hammered into my chest. Then came the receipts. Hotel stays paid with her personal card, which was linked to our joint account. Transfers to an account under Dean's name, small at first, 500, 1,000, then bigger. Over months it added up to $35,000. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. "She's been moving money for almost 2 years, Moses said quietly. "Started small, got bold around last spring. 35,000, I whispered. "That's our retirement fund." He nodded. I checked the bank records. "There's more, a loan she took out against the house 2 months ago, 15 grand. I looked up at him, the edges of my vision pulsing.
"She mortgaged my damn house. Her signature only," Moses said. "Which means she forged it." The diner's noise faded, plates, clinking chatter. The hiss of coffee refills. All of it sank under the rush in my ears. I thought I'd feel rage. But what I felt was colder than that. It was calculation. "How long has it been with him?" I asked. "Best guess, 18, maybe 20 months. 2 years of lies. 2 years of her sitting at our table every morning drinking coffee I made while her heart lived somewhere else." I leaned back, staring at the window. Outside, a bus went by, its reflection cutting through my face like a scar. "What are you gonna do?" Moses asked. I didn't answer right away. I was thinking of that photo of her at the hotel, the way she looked lighter, freer. I realized then she hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been relieved too. "I'm gonna get my life back," I said finally, "but I'll do it clean." Moses nodded slowly. "Good. 'Cause if you go swinging, she'll drag you down with her." He handed me another folder, copies of everything. "You'll need this for your lawyer. There's a woman I know, Harriet Brown. Smart, fair, knows how to handle snakes without getting bit." I took the folder, feeling its weight. "I appreciate it, Mo." He hesitated before standing. "Harlan, I seen this story too many times. Don't let it eat you. She's already taken enough." When he left, I sat there staring at the coffee that had gone cold. My reflection rippled in the dark surface, a tired old man who'd spent his life building something just to watch someone else sell it piece by piece. I thought about going home, about facing her right then, about slamming the folder down on the kitchen table and demanding the truth from her own lips. But Moses's voice echoed in my head. "Don't let it eat you." So I didn't go home angry. I went home quiet. Marianne was on the couch, legs tucked under her, watching TV. She smiled when she saw me like nothing in the world had shifted. "Hey, baby," she said. "Long day." "Long enough," I said, setting my briefcase down. "Want dinner, ho?" "I already ate." She nodded, turned back to the screen, humming along with a commercial jingle. The same mouth that had whispered to another man that morning. I walked upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened the folder one more time. Photos, bank slips, receipts, a catalog of betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I just stared until the lines blurred and whispered to myself, "This is what truth looks like." And I decided right then that the next time Marianne saw me, it wouldn't be as her husband. It would be as the man who'd come to collect what she owed. The next morning, the city woke gray and heavy, like the sky itself couldn't decide whether to cry or hold it in. I drove to Midtown, to a small law office wedged between a pawn shop and a dentist. The brass sign out front said, "Harriet Brown, attorney at law."
The kind of name that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Inside the place smelled of old paper and peppermint tea. The secretary looked up when I walked in, saw the envelope in my hand, and must have recognized the look on my face. That look men get when something in their life has died, but the body's still walking. "Mr. Pierce," she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Ms. Brown will see you in 5 minutes." I sat on a bench, the kind that makes your knees ache just enough to remind you you're not young anymore. The walls were lined with Degree's family photos and a single framed quote that read, "Justice isn't revenge, it's remembering who you are in the middle of the storm." When Harriet finally came out, she was exactly as Moses had described, mid-50s tall, composed, wearing a navy suit, and eyes that could cut through excuses like wire through cloth. She shook my hand firmly. "Moses said you might be coming," she said. "Let's sit." Her office was neat but not cold, stacks of folders. A small plant fighting for sunlight, a half-empty mug of tea beside a pile of case notes. She motioned for me to start talking. So I did. From the first lie to the last photograph. She didn't interrupt, didn't gasp, didn't make the usual noises people make when they pretend to feel sorry for you. She just listened, tapping a pen lightly against her legal pad. When I finished, she asked one question. "Do you want her punished, or do you want your life back?" I stared at the papers between us. "What's the difference, Plenty?" she said. "Punishment costs time, life costs money. You can't afford to lose both." She slid the folder back toward me. "Here's what we'll do. We'll file for divorce under financial misconduct and marital fraud. That gives us leverage to freeze joint assets before she drains the rest. We'll need to act fast." "Oh, fast." "Today." Her precision steadied me. I'd been living in chaos for so long that her certainty felt like oxygen. She continued, "You'll close your joint accounts immediately. I'll draft an emergency motion to prevent her from accessing the house equity. And one more thing, don't confront her." "Not yet." I frowned. "She's already stealing from me." "You want me to just sit there?" Harriet leaned back. "You've already been living with a thief, Harlan. Another few days won't kill you, but if you go at her now, she'll hide everything. Let the law do the bleeding." The words hit me like a slap wrapped in silk. I nodded slowly. "All right." We spent 2 hours combing through the evidence, the transfers, the signatures, the mortgage documents. Harriet's face hardened when she saw the forged signature. "She falsified this," she said, tapping her nail on the page. "You never signed this refinancing form, not once." "Then she committed bank fraud," Harriet said. "And that changes everything." "How so?" "Because now," she said, leaning forward, "we're not talking about heartbreak anymore. We're talking about a felony." The word felony sat in the air like a thunderhead. "Do you want her prosecuted?" she asked quietly. I thought about it. About Marianne's laugh in that restaurant. About the years she'd stolen while pretending to love me. About the house I'd built nail by nail, now carrying her lies in its walls. "I don't want her in prison," I said finally, "but I want her to feel what it's like to lose something that can't be replaced." Harriet smiled faintly. "Then we'll make sure she walks out of that house with nothing but the clothes she lied in."
That afternoon I went to the bank. The teller knew me, old man with steady habits, same checks every month, never a day late. When I asked to close our joint account, she blinked like I'd said I was moving to Mars. "Everything all right, Mr. Pierce?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, "but it will be." By sunset, the accounts were frozen, the savings moved, and the deed secured under my name only. The house that had once been ours was legally mine again. For the first time in months, I felt something close to relief. That night, Marianne breezed through the door at 9:30, hair still perfect, lipstick smudged just enough to tell the truth. "You're up late again," she said, setting her purse down. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. She stretched, smiling that distant smile. "I'm heading to Palm Beach this weekend. My sister's sick. Needs me to help her with some things." Her sister. The one she hadn't spoken to in a year. I looked up from my newspaper. "That's so, yeah."
Might be gone a few days. You'll survive without me, won't you? I've been practicing, I said. She laughed, not realizing it was the last time she'd laugh in this house. The next morning I met Harriet again to sign the preliminary papers. She handed me copies of everything, neat, organized, merciless. We'll file once she's gone, she said. Easier that way. She won't see it coming. Palm Beach, I said. That's where she'll be, good Harriet replied. Let her enjoy the sun while we turn off the lights. I hesitated at the door before leaving. You ever been through something like this? She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, Yes, I survived it. That's how I know you will too. When Marianne left 2 days later, she kissed my cheek at the door and told me not to eat too much of that frozen junk while she was gone. I watched her drive away, the taillights fading into the gray of morning. And for the first time, I didn't feel dread. I felt calm. I closed the door behind her, locked it, and turned to face the house. Every picture on the wall, every shadow on the floor. They all seemed to whisper the same thing. It's time. I picked up the phone and called Harriet. She's gone. Good, she said. Then let's begin. By the end of the day, everything was in motion. The filings, the asset freezes, the quiet storm that would dismantle the life Marianne thought she could steal. As I hung up, I poured myself a glass of bourbon, the first in weeks, and stared out at the rain beginning to fall. I thought about what Harriet had said. Let the law do the bleeding. And I realized she was right, because revenge is noisy. But justice moves in silence, steady, patient, inevitable. Sunday came like a ghost with soft footsteps. The kind of day that looks peaceful to everyone else, but to you, it's a fuse burning towards something irreversible. By 5 in the afternoon, the house was spotless. Every picture of Marianne had been packed away. Her clothes were folded into labeled boxes in the garage, 30 years of shared life reduced to cardboard and silence. The only thing left was the black envelope on the coffee table. That envelope had weight, not because of what it held, but because of what it ended. At exactly 5:15, tires crunched over gravel. A car door slammed. Footsteps approached. Then came the sound of a key trying to fit into a lock that no longer belonged to her. Click, click, then a pause, and knocking. Harlan. Her voice through the door was casual at first, almost cheerful.
Why doesn't my key work? I stood in the hallway watching her shadow through the frosted glass.
She knocked again, harder this time. Harlan. Are you in there? I opened the door slowly. She stood on the porch with her pink suitcase, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary years ago, sunburned, smiling, radiant with the arrogance of a woman who thought the world still spun around her. Hey, she said brightly, brushing her hair from her face. Surprise, I came back a day early. Yeah, I said quietly. You sure did. She stepped forward, expecting a kiss. I didn't move. Her smile faltered. What's going on? Come in, I said. We need to talk. Inside, the afternoon light cut across the living room, warm and golden. It should have felt like homecoming. Instead, it felt like judgment. She set her purse down, looked around, and noticed the neatness, the absence. Why does the house look so empty? I gestured toward the sofa. Sit. She frowned but obeyed, still half smiling, as if this were some odd little domestic game. Then she noticed the man sitting across from her. Julian Carter stood when she entered, a tall, composed man in a charcoal suit, briefcase beside him, expression neutral. Who's this? She asked. My attorney, I said. The word dropped like a hammer. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me as if she'd just realized the joke wasn't funny anymore. Harlan. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. I walked to the credenza, picked up the black envelope, and placed it gently on the table in front of her. What's that? Open it. She stared at it for a moment, her hand trembling slightly. Then she tore it open. The first photo slid out, her and Dean Porter leaving the boutique hotel. Her eyes widened, her face drained of color. Then came another photo, and another. Receipts, bank transfers, hotel invoices, pages of text messages printed in neat black lines. She flipped through them faster and faster, her breathing sharp, shallow. Where did you get this?" she whispered. "I hired someone," I said. "A professional." "Harlan, I can explain." "No." My voice was calm, too calm. "I've heard enough of your explanations for 2 years. You don't get to rewrite this one." She looked at Julian, panicked. "You can't just, this is private." Julian spoke for the first time, his tone clipped and cold. "Mrs. Pierce, in that envelope you'll also find divorce documents. Your husband is petitioning for dissolution of marriage on the grounds of adultery and financial fraud." Her head snapped toward me. "Divorce?" I said nothing. Julian continued, professional as a surgeon. "The house is in Mr. Pierce's name. It remains his. The vehicles are also his. Joint accounts have been closed. You have until next Sunday to remove your belongings under supervision and only items verified as personal property." She blinked rapidly as if the words themselves were attacking her. "You can't do this." "I already did. I said." Her voice broke. "You're throwing me out." I nodded toward the boxes visible through the open garage door. "Your things are packed. Everything you came with and nothing more." She stood, eyes wet, trembling. "Harlan, please, we can talk about this. We can fix it. Fix it." My laugh came out like glass breaking. "You spent 2 years lying to my face. You emptied our savings for a man who used you like a bank account. Tell me, how do you fix that?" She covered her mouth, shaking her head. "It was a mistake." "No," I cut in. "A mistake lasts a night, not 2 years." The silence that followed was the kind that hums. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Julian cleared his throat. "Mrs. Pierce, you have 2 options. You can sign these documents now, ending the marriage quietly, or refuse and face legal charges for forgery and fraud." Additionally, he glanced at me. "My client has prepared a letter to your family and close acquaintances detailing the evidence. It remains sealed unless you contest." She stared at me, horror widening her eyes. "You wouldn't." "I would," I said softly. "I trusted you with everything I had. Don't test what I'll do when I have nothing left to lose." Her lip quivered. She sank back onto the sofa, defeated. Julian laid the divorce papers in front of her. "If you wish to sign, the pen is here." She hesitated, her hand hovering over the pen. "You're really ending 30 years like this." "No," I said. "You ended it when you walked into that hotel room." For a moment she just sat there, trembling, staring down at the papers that would erase her old life. Then slowly she picked up the pen. Her signature came out uneven, shaky. Each stroke of ink sounded louder than thunder in that quiet room. When she finished, she pushed the papers back toward Julian and whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long time. "So am I." Julian gathered the documents neatly. "It's done," he said. "Mrs. Pierce, you'll receive notice once the court finalizes the decree. I'll see myself out." When he left, the door shut with a soft click that sounded too much like finality. She stayed sitting, head in her hands, sobbing quietly. I felt nothing. Not rage, not triumph, just an odd, hollow calm. Finally I said, "You should go now." She looked up, her face streaked with mascara. "I have nowhere to go. Then I guess you'll have to call Dean." She flinched like I'd struck her. He doesn't want." "I know," I said. "He dumped you when the money stopped." Moses told me. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then broke. She stood slowly like a woman underwater and walked toward the door. Her suitcase wheels clicked softly against the floor. At the threshold, she turned to me one last time. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that for a moment. "No," I said finally. "Hate takes effort. You're not worth that anymore." And with that, she was gone. The door closed. The sound of her footsteps faded down the driveway. Then silence, deep, absolute. I walked to the window and watched the cab pull away, carrying 30 years of my life in 2 cardboard boxes and a pink suitcase. When the taillights disappeared, I turned back to the house. The photos, the evidence, all still scattered on the table. I gathered them, walked to the fireplace, and lit a match. The flame caught fast, curling edges black, the photos warping into ghosts of faces that didn't matter anymore. I watched until nothing was left but ash. Then I poured myself a drink. It burned going down, but it was the kind of burn that tells you you're alive. And for the first time in 2 years, I breathed without feeling like the air was borrowed. Outside, the evening sun slipped beneath the trees, long shadows stretching across the lawn. Inside, everything was still.
Everything was mine again. And I realized something as the fire crackled behind me. I hadn't just lost a wife. I'd buried a ghost. The first morning after she left, I woke up before dawn, same as I always had, but the house sounded different. It wasn't the silence that got me, it was the absence. No kettle whistling, no hairdryer humming down the hall, no perfume hanging in the air like a lie dressed as routine. Just quiet. Honest, bare, unadorned quiet. I poured myself coffee in the same chipped mug I'd been using for 20 years and sat by the kitchen window watching the first light crawl across the street. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. Freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes like this still, gray ordinary, and then it stays. By 9 a.m., Julian called. "It's filed," he said. She signed everything. "Court date's just a formality now. You did good, Harlan." I thanked him, though good felt like too small a word for what I'd been through. Then he asked, "How are you doing?" I didn't know how to answer. People ask that when they don't really want to know. But Julian wasn't like that. His voice had that weight, the kind that comes from seeing too many people broken by the same kind of war. "I'm lighter," I said finally. "Tired, but lighter." "That's what healing feels like," he said. "Exhaustion that finally means something." After I hung up, I looked around the kitchen, the counter she used to clutter with mail and makeup, the chair she always tilted back when she laughed. Everything was still but not dead, just waiting for me to reclaim it. 3 days passed before the outside world started to notice. Mrs. Thompson next door knocked while I was watering the plants. "Morning, Harlan," she said, her voice tiptoeing around curiosity. "Haven't seen Marianne lately. She visiting family." I took a slow breath, something like that. She smiled, that polite southern smile people use when they know more than they should. "Well, if you need a casserole, just holler." I thanked her, and she left, probably already dialing someone to spread the news. That's the thing about small neighborhoods, gossips faster than any mail service. By the end of the week, folks knew my wife had left. What they didn't know, and what I wasn't about to tell, was why. Let them guess. Let them think whatever made sense to them. The truth was mine now, private, clean. Marcus showed up Saturday morning unannounced, holding a box of donuts and 2 coffees. My younger brother, 3 years younger, still carrying that mix of pity and protectiveness. Older men hate to see in the eyes of someone who used to look up to them. I heard he said, simply sitting down at the table. "Of course you did," I said. "She called Mom," he continued. "Said you threw her out. Said you went crazy." Sounds about right. She didn't say why. I gave him a look. "Does she ever?" He sighed. "Mom's worried. Brenda too. They just want to know you're okay." "I'm better than I've been in years," I said truthfully. He studied me for a moment, sipping his coffee. "You don't look broken." I was. I just learned how to carry the pieces. Marcus leaned back, nodding slowly. "She'll twist the story, you know. Make herself the victim." "Let her," I said. "People who need to believe her will. People who know me won't." He smiled faintly. "That's the calmest revenge I've ever heard." "It's not revenge," I said. "It's closure." That afternoon, I walked through my house, as if seeing it for the first time. I ran my fingers along the piano keys, dusted picture frames, opened windows she always kept shut. The air that came in was sharp and cold, but it felt pure. In the living room, the empty space where her portrait used to hang caught the light differently now. I decided to leave it blank, not as a wound, but as a window. By evening, I found myself sitting on the back porch, whiskey in hand, listening to the cicadas sing. The world felt bigger now that she was gone, like I'd been living in a box I hadn't noticed until someone opened the lid. I thought about calling her mother, telling her the truth. But what was the point? Her family would always believe their version. Besides, she didn't need my help ruining her own life. That part had already begun.
The next day I got a call from Yvette, the woman Marianne always claimed to be meeting. Mr. Pierce. This is Yvette. We haven't met, but, well, I think I owe you an apology. I didn't say anything. She continued. Marianne used my name for months. Said we were together when she wasn't. I didn't know until recently. I know I said. I just wanted you to hear it from me. She's staying with a friend of mine now. She keeps saying you ruined her life. I let out a small laugh. She ruined her own. I just stopped financing it. Yvette was quiet for a moment. I believe you. Thank you, I said softly. Before hanging up, she added, She looks lost, Mr. Pierce, like she doesn't know who she is anymore. She doesn't, I said. She traded herself away a long time ago. After the call, I sat in silence for a long time. There was a kind of justice in what Yvette had said, not the gloating kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that restores balance without ceremony.
Marianne was alive, but hollow. I was alone, but whole. That's what justice looks like when you're old enough to stop needing applause.
On Thursday, the divorce was finalized. Julian called again, voice steady as ever. It's official, Harlan. You're free. I thanked him, hung up, and went to the kitchen window. Same one I'd stared out of that morning after she left. The same street, the same sun, but it looked different now, because for the first time in 30 years it was mine to see however I wanted. I brewed another cup of coffee, stronger this time, and carried it outside. The autumn air was cool, crisp, scented with wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. And standing there, mug in hand, I realized something I hadn't understood until that moment. She had taken my trust, my money, my years, but I had taken back my peace, and that was worth every ounce of pain it cost to earn it. It's strange how quickly the world forgets your heartbreak. One week you're the man everyone whispers about at the grocery store, and the next you're just another old guy choosing ripe avocados invisible again. And that, I realized, is a blessing. By the time November rolled in, the air had sharpened, the leaves thinned, and the nights came earlier. The house felt cleaner, almost lighter, as if it had been holding its breath for years, and was finally allowed to exhale. Some mornings I'd still wake expecting to hear her voice. Muscle memory, I suppose. 30 years of routine doesn't disappear overnight, but the silence that followed didn't ache anymore. It comforted me. I started walking again. Just a mile around the neighborhood, sometimes down to the park, where old men fed ducks like they were feeding pieces of themselves to something that didn't judge. I'd nod at them, they'd nod back. No words, just quiet understanding. Marcus called every few days. You're sounding good, he said one evening. I'm being good, I corrected him. There's a difference. He chuckled. You ever think about dating again? Dating, I said, almost laughing. I can barely stand small talk. What am I going to do with romance? Stranger things have happened, brother. I shook my head even though he couldn't see it. Let me enjoy being my own man for a while. It's been too long since I answered to no one. A week later, I ran into Marianne. It happened in the cereal aisle at Winn-Dixie of all places. She looked smaller somehow, her hair darker, her clothes plain. When she saw me, she froze. The box of cornflakes in her hand trembled. Harlan, she said finally, you look well. I am. A long pause. I heard the divorce went through. Yeah, I said, all done. She nodded, biting her lip, searching for a way back into a conversation that no longer had a door. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. Again, I know I said. Do you hate me? She asked softly. No, I said, I just don't think about you much anymore. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then she nodded, swallowed hard, and pushed her cart away. I watched her go, this woman who had once been my whole world, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not love, just peace. That's how I knew I was finally free. Days turned into weeks. I filled my time with things I'd once given up: reading, cooking, even fixing that old Chevy I'd let rust in the driveway. Every task, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming a piece of the man I used to be. Sometimes I'd find myself talking to her ghost, not the real her, but the memory of the woman I thought she was. I wish you'd just told me the truth, I'd say, while tightening a bolt or stirring a pot of stew. But then I'd laugh because ghosts don't answer, and maybe that's for the best.
About a month after the divorce, I got a call from Moses. "Just checking in," he said. "You still standing?" "I'm not just standing, Mo," I said. "I'm walking forward," he chuckled. "That's what I like to hear." Then after a pause, "You know that guy she was seeing, Dean Porter, lost his real estate license. Got caught in some scam with phony appraisals. The man's broke." For a moment I didn't say anything. Then I exhaled slowly. Life has a way of balancing the scales, doesn't it? "Sure does," Moses said. "But it ain't revenge, Harlan. It's just gravity." After we hung up, I sat in my chair by the window for a long time thinking about that word, gravity. Maybe that's all justice is, the slow, inevitable pull of truth, dragging everything back to where it belongs.
The following Sunday, I went to church for the first time in years. Not because I suddenly found God, but because I needed to sit somewhere quiet, surrounded by people who were also trying to make sense of their lives. The pastor talked about forgiveness, about how it's not for the one who wronged you, but for yourself. And as I sat there, I realized I already understood that. I didn't need to forgive Marianne to move on. I just needed to forgive me. Forgive myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting too deeply, for loving someone who couldn't love me back the same way. When the choir sang, I closed my eyes and let the music wash over me like rain over old dust.
Later that week, I started journaling, just small things, memories, lessons, thoughts. It helped. One evening I wrote, "There's no revenge greater than peace, no justice sharper than calm." I stared at the line for a long time, then underlined it twice, because that was the truth I'd learned in the hardest way. When you stop needing to prove that you were right, life proves it for you.
Winter crept in. The nights grew longer. But I didn't mind. The house, once filled with tension, now carried warmth. My own laughter echoed off the walls again, quieter, maybe, but real. I'd spent decades building a life for someone else. Now, every quiet evening, every cup of coffee, every sunrise felt like a homecoming to myself. And sometimes when I stood at the window watching the light change, I caught my reflection. Older, wiser, still standing, and I thought, "You made it, old man. Not rich, not young, but free." And that at 66 was more than I'd ever thought I'd have again. Winter settled over Georgia like a heavy quilt, cold enough to sting your fingers, but quiet enough to make the world feel like it was holding its breath. The days were shorter, the evenings long and patient. It had been nearly 3 months since the divorce became official. 3 months since I watched the last of her boxes disappear in the back of a cab. 3 months since I'd realized that silence, when it's honest, doesn't hurt at all. I'd started building small rituals to fill the spaces she used to occupy. Every morning I brewed my coffee slow the way I liked it. I read the newspaper front to back, even the obituaries. I'd tell myself I wasn't looking for anyone's name, but maybe part of me still expected hers to appear one day, as if closure could ever be printed in black and white. Some nights I'd light a fire in the old brick hearth, pour a single glass of whiskey, and let the flames do the talking. The house creaked differently now, like it was stretching after a long sleep. One evening I found myself staring into the fire longer than usual. The logs snapped and hissed, orange tongues curling around black wood. The warmth reached my hands, but my thoughts stayed cold. That's when I realized something. All those years with Marianne, I'd thought the house was our anchor, our proof of something lasting. But the truth, it had been a cage we built together, and I was the one who'd locked the door from the inside. She had her betrayal, yes, but I had mine too. I betrayed myself, by staying quiet when I knew she was drifting away, by mistaking comfort for love, by calling endurance devotion. There's a cruel kind of blindness that comes with loyalty. You start confusing your own silence for strength. I took another sip of whiskey and let that truth burn all the way down. A week later, I received a letter in the mail, no return address, but I knew the handwriting the second I saw it. Marianne. Inside was a single page, the writing shaky. "Harlan, I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to start over. I got a job at a small diner in Savannah. It's not much, but it's honest. I think about what we had and what I destroyed. I wish I could go back, but life doesn't hand out rewinds. I hope you're doing better. I hope you found peace. Mary Ann. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it on the mantel above the fire. I didn't feel anger or pity, just a strange gratitude. Because she was right, life doesn't hand out rewinds, but sometimes it offers a small, quiet afterward. That night, I fed the letter to the fire, watched it curl, twist, and vanish into ash. I whispered something I hadn't said out loud before. Goodbye, Mary Ann. And for the first time, the word didn't taste bitter. By February, the world had begun thawing. The dogwoods were budding early, the sky softer. Marcus and Brenda came by one Saturday afternoon. She brought banana pudding. He brought questions I didn't want to answer. You've been quiet lately, Marcus said. You okay? I smiled. I'm just learning how to live without noise. He chuckled. That's some poetic old man nonsense. Maybe, I said, but it's the kind that saves you. We ate pudding on the porch, the 3 of us watching the street. Neighbors waved, kids shouted in the distance. Life rolled on, indifferent to anyone's heartbreak, and that too was a comfort. That night after they left, I went to the garage. Her boxes were still there, neat, stacked, untouched. She'd never come back for them. I stood there a long time, wondering why I'd kept them at all. Maybe part of me had still been waiting. Maybe closure isn't a clean cut, it's a slow unraveling. Then I made a decision. I called Marcus the next morning. You still got that truck? Always, he said. Good, bring it over. I've got some things to donate. We loaded every box into the back. Clothes, trinkets, books, bits of a life that no longer belonged here. We drove to the Salvation Army down on Peachtree. When I handed over the final box, the lady behind the counter smiled. You letting go of some old memories, sir? Something like that, I said. As we drove back, Marcus glanced at me. You feel lighter, like I just opened a window that's been painted shut. He smiled. Guess that's what healing looks like at 66. I nodded. Not pretty, but honest. That evening I sat by the fire again. Only this time I didn't stare into it searching for meaning. I just watched the flames dance. Because sometimes it's enough to let things burn, not out of vengeance but out of respect. You burn the memories not to erase them but to warm yourself on their ashes. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and felt the quiet settle around me. Not like emptiness, but like peace. That's when I finally understood what all those long months had been teaching me. There's no fire hotter than the one that burns away illusion, and once you survive it, you don't fear the dark anymore. Spring came quietly. No grand announcement, no sudden burst of color, just the steady unfurling of life that refuses to quit. The dogwoods outside my kitchen window bloomed white soft as forgiveness. The mornings smelled like rain and clean soil, and for the first time in years, I started to look forward to waking up. It had been 6 months since Mary Ann left. 6 months since the storm passed through and left me standing in its wreckage, blinking in the new light. I wasn't the same man who'd stood at that door watching her walk away. The hurt had dulled into something else, not numbness, not bitterness, just a kind of knowing. I had stopped counting days and started measuring peace in small moments. The quiet drip of coffee, the sound of the neighbor's dog barking at nothing, the warmth of sunlight slipping through the curtains onto my bare hands. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't come to you in triumph. It sits down beside you when you've run out of words.
One Sunday, Marcus convinced me to go fishing with him again. We hadn't done that in years. We drove out to Lake Lanier before sunrise, the truck loaded with coffee bait and the kind of silence brothers can share without needing to fill. The water was glass that morning, the mist curling like smoke over its surface. We didn't talk for a long time, just listened to the small sounds of the world, crickets' lines spooling the soft click of the reel. After a while, Marcus said, "You know, Harlan, I think you look younger than you did last year. Guess peace is cheaper than plastic surgery," I said, smiling. He laughed, the sound bouncing across the water. You ever think about what's next? Next, yeah. You've been through hell, brother. Now what I thought about that. The question hung between us like bait waiting for a bite. I think next is just living, I said finally. Not fixing, not proving, just being. I spent half my life trying to make someone else happy.
The rest of it I'm going to spend learning how to make myself whole. He nodded. That's a damn good plan. The sun broke through the clouds, then scattering gold across the lake. The kind of light that doesn't ask for your attention, but gets it anyway. And in that moment I realized I wasn't waiting for the past to make sense anymore. It didn't need to. It had already done its job. It had changed me. That evening back home, I found myself cooking dinner, real dinner, for the first time in years. Roasted chicken with rosemary mashed potatoes, green beans sautéed in butter. I poured a glass of red wine, set a single plate on the table, and ate slow without hurry. Every bite tasted like beginning. Afterward, I sat on the porch with my old record player, a Louis Armstrong vinyl spinning low and warm through the night. Fireflies flickered over the yard. Somewhere down the block, a child laughed. Life still happening, still unbroken. I thought about Mary Ann, not with pain anymore, but with distance. She had become part of a story that no longer belonged to me. I didn't wish her well, but I didn't wish her harm either. I just hoped she found a corner of peace like the one I'd built here. Because that's what time does. If you let it, it softens the edges. That night before bed, I wrote one last entry in my journal. I used to think forgiveness was a gift you give someone else. Now I know it's the house you build for yourself after the fire. You don't owe anyone entry, but you still light the lamp. I closed the book and set it on the nightstand. In the mirror, I caught my reflection, the gray in my beard, thicker, the lines around my eyes deeper. But the man staring back didn't look broken anymore. He looked steady, rooted, whole. Maybe that's the real miracle of growing older. You stop chasing what you've lost and start cherishing what stayed. The next morning I woke before sunrise. The air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. I brewed my coffee in silence, walked out onto the porch, and watched the first light stretch across the horizon. The world was still, and for the first time in a very long time, so was I. There was no pain, no anger, no noise, just a man, his breath in the morning air, and the promise of another day. And as the sun rose, gold spilling over the rooftops, I whispered to no one in particular, I made it. Because sometimes the greatest story you'll ever live is simply learning how to start again. You know, people think revenge is loud, explosive, something that leaves blood on the floor and smoke in the air, but I learned it's not. Revenge can be quiet, like closing a door for the last time and never looking back. I didn't ruin her life. I just stopped letting her ruin mine. Now every morning I wake up to silence and it feels like peace. Because sometimes the sweetest justice is simply surviving better than the person who broke you. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself from ashes, tell me in the comments how you did it. Maybe your story will help someone else find their way out of the fire.